Give us your name and address, please.
Well, I'm Lynn Weeks, and it's nice to be here.
Address,
you guys,
please. Address, please.
oh, 38 Magnolia Dune Circle. That's my home address.
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine. You guys have a very complex issue here in front of you. I was here at your last workshop. I think Commissioner Jones laid it out best with this is multiple issues that are all going to have to be handled separately. But I understand you're listening to us today to talk about different things. You have heard from a vast array of people here today talking about fear. I think that is really the number one thing that I've heard from people downtown is the dogs, the pit bulls, and the rainbow, whatever they are, rainbow children, rainbow people. They really do send a bad message to our town. We need to project an impression of safety and security for our residents and our guests and our children and our business owners and our employees and all the people who come downtown. You know, this isn't a big city where people are used to seeing all of this type of stuff. We want it to be a different, unique city that promotes tourism and a family environment, and something should be done, although I know it's a very difficult thing, but I encourage you to do something to try to help all of us work together to come to a solution. The congestion on the sidewalks, we've heard about that, where people have said people lay in the, on the sidewalk, they put their backpacks, you can't walk over them. I can tell you, I'm afraid to walk down that street when there's 2 or 3 pit bulls on chains that can lurch out at you at any time. And believe me, this is not something that I'm making up. I mean, just walk down there sometime and pretend you're just an innocent person, especially if you've got a little child with you, and walk past those dogs. It's frightening. The other thing, you've heard Crystal and others talk about the noise back when the street entertainers were here. Mr. Slavin wasn't here back until 1999. This has been going on for way before there. And I can tell you, when you have to listen to that entertainer, I don't care how good or how bad he is, after about 5 hours of the same 3 songs, they're all bad. It's like Chinese water torture in your store, and there's nothing you can do about it. The business community down here has to follow the strictest rules of anywhere I've ever seen as far as the types of buildings, the small windows, the signs. Everything they have to do is intended to increase the historic ambiance that we have in St. Augustine. We know every building's not old, but it's supposed to project that ambiance of being old. And yet, after all the regulations and rules they have to go through, anybody can come on the street with plastic bins and cheap Chinese imports and sell them right in front of your office or your restaurant. And if you go out there and ask them to move it, they will tell you, as they've told Ms. Messner, I have an ordinance to protect me. There's nothing you can do for me because I'm 50 feet off of St. George Street. And they are very rude, and they're not part of our downtown. They're gypsies, basically. I just ask that you do not do anything to jeopardize the ordinance that we already have. It's working, it's been upheld in the courts, and to answer your question, do I see anything that I would want to change? I would like to expand that. I think the ordinance that you have on St. George Street that deals with entertainers and sales of merchandise and other things on St. George Street, it's working because we have, if you can just give me one more minute like Mr. Slavin had to finish
Sure.
up,
Go
I'd
ahead.
appreciate it.
I haven't cut anybody off today. Go ahead.
Thank you. You know, we have an ordinance, and I would just encourage you not to do anything to jeopardize that. It's been jeopardized before. The judges have told you what you have to do, not you, but previous commissions, and you needed to get it back in a very tight, defined area, which you have. And once you start loosening that a little bit, you open the door. I would say, please don't think about putting dining tables out on the street or anything on the street of a commercial nature, because when you do, you jeopardize this ordinance, because that's part of this ordinance is to promote the flow of pedestrian traffic on a tightly congested street, and any commercial activity that you put out there is going to bring this ordinance into jeopardy. You have 3 things that you can enforce: time, place, and manner. And I will agree with Mr. Slavin on one thing. Mallory Square is a great example of what we want. And somewhere on the San Sebastian or Key West or wherever you put it is wonderful. That is a place. And if you put entertainers and artists and other types of activities in the proper place, I think everybody in this room would agree that that's a wonderful thing. It's a great asset. It's just that in our historic district, the way it is not the proper time, place, or manner to do this. I just want to tell you, I've sat where you sit. I've sat where you are sitting today. And you've heard from an audience that has been very civil. By and large, most of us all agree that there's a problem. I can only tell you, I sat there, and for months after months after months, we were drilled and criticized and slandered. And I mean, people say that we were mean to the entertainers. Well, unfortunately, something had to give, and we tried to come up with something that worked for everybody. And it's a severe measure. I wish myself that there could be something that was in between, but there's not. So what you have is working. If you can find some locations, especially for the vendors, the transient vendors, in an area that's appropriate, that's organized, and including artists and street entertainers, I'm all for it. That's what was proposed back in 2000, to find a place that we could promote this type of thing, just like Mallory Square. I love Mallory Square. The artists and the street entertainers at that time basically said, no, you can't control us because we have our First Amendment rights. We did what we had to do. The First Amendment right have been found constitutional in this case, and I'm just urging you to do something that kind of finds that right place for this type of activity, but do not jeopardize the existing ordinance.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Weeks. Sure.
Mr. Weeks, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but is there a place?
There is a
You
place,
can
I'm not
make-
sure where it is, but I can tell you that there is some places, and it could be found that there's some places, but I don't think it's like just all of a sudden you open up the floodgates and say anybody who wants to come here. I think what you've heard today from many of these speakers is, I'm an artist, I'm an entertainer, I don't mind some regulation, I don't mind having to pay a license, liability insurance, have some judging of my product and things. If you were to do that and find the right place, then I think you would find a compromise solution that would work for everybody. But I will tell you the one place that it's not, and that's St. George Street and some of the side streets, because they're just too congested, and they promote things that are not what you have in mind when you say, I'd like to have some entertainers. There's a whole other element that comes in with that is what you don't want to encourage. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way I look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.